Hey everyone, welcome to Sociastrology. Today we're going to take a look at the lunar eclipse in Virgo, which is taking place on the 3rd of March of 2026. So this is going to be the second of 3 lunar eclipses in Virgo that we're getting in a row. We had one last Pisces season, and we're going to have another one next Pisces season. So looking at some of the themes that arose in your life last March, particularly around March 14th, can be quite helpful and informative of what this is going to mean for you. But I do also have time-stamped horoscopes for all signs to check out as well. But before we get into those, I'm going to look at this from a technical perspective. We're going to just kind of look at it as an eclipse. We'll go into how we can expect for this to play out on a collective energetic level, and then how we can expect for this to play out on a global political level. So as we can see, this is taking place at 12 degrees and 53 minutes of Virgo, almost 13 degrees. We, of course, have the opposition to the sun that's inherent in a full moon. We also have this moon forming a mutually applying opposition with Mercury, which is the ruler of it. So what I mean by that is that because this lunar eclipse is in Virgo, its ruler is the ruler of Virgo, which is Mercury, and that is out here at the opposite point. Plus Mercury, this little RX, signifies that it's retrograde, which means it's moving backward while the moon is moving forward toward that opposition, both of them. Additionally, Mercury is in its detriment and its fall in Pisces. This is to say that it is in an environment in which it is very uncomfortable. So all of the Mercury things, especially the Virgo and Mercury things that we like to do to be able to think clearly, communicate clearly, to be able to organize our lives and our thoughts, to be able to compartmentalize and label things and sort everything out, that is decreased in efficacy when Mercury is in Pisces, because Pisces is not an orderly environment. It is a universalizing environment. So it doesn't like to compartmentalize or to put things in boxes. So that's in part why Mercury can really struggle here. But it also then indicates that the thinking style, as well as the ideas, the thoughts, the words, they're more based on feeling and belief rather than specifically hard evidence like Virgo would like to see. So it's a complicated relationship without a doubt between that moon and Mercury, its ruler. Now, we do have an interesting saving grace here, which is the configuration that this is making the moon, the sun, and then Mercury as well with the moon. You can see that they are creating off of these red lines, the oppositions, these blue lines down to Jupiter and Cancer. Jupiter in Cancer is exalted, so it's in a really wonderful state. It's able to help out a lot, and it's very, very inclined to help out in this situation. The reason for that is that it is in Cancer, the sign ruled by the moon, plus Jupiter here is ruling all of these planets that are out in Pisces. So it is well situated to help out with this situation and very inclined to. Now, this also stood out to me in terms of this eclipse. It looks, in terms of those configurations, this opposition with the trine and the wedge, the moon was at 15 degrees of Pisces and the sun was at 15 degrees of Virgo during the Pisces lunar eclipse that took place in September. I think that was on September 7th of 2025 as well. And they were also creating that trine sextile configuration to Jupiter and Cancer then as well. So going into this, I kind of feel like I know what this eclipse is going to feel like, subjectively at least, which is very similar to the one last year, which again, a lot of us seemed to feel quite deeply, but was quite introspective, was very spiritual, was very sensitive, was very quiet. It took a lot of people into this kind of retreat state or this withdrawn state. Now, because of the fact that this eclipse is in Virgo, I think that this one is a bit more orderly. I think there is this tendency to desire to seek a sense of order and cohesion and understanding, rather than allowing for just the energy to like wash over and bring whatever wisdom it will, like a lunar eclipse in Pisces. But I think looking back to, again, Pisces season around March 14th and then Virgo season around September 7th can help to inform how this is going to subjectively feel internally for us. So on the collective energetic level, this should be encouraging a lot of introversion, a lot of reflection on what we believe, on how we feel about ourselves, about our prospects, about the literal circumstances and situations of our lives, looking at that moon in Virgo. What is ordered? What do we have evidence of in terms of our condition, how we're doing? And what are we taking on faith? And do we feel like we even can at this point just kind of take things on faith? I think that is something that we are likely struggling with, but getting our footing around a little bit more. This eclipse is also just on the other side of an exact conjunction between Saturn and Neptune in Aries as well, which has also been calling into question what we believe about ourselves and how we can order our lives better, how we can create a sense of being able to build the lives that we're wanting by putting in effort, by finding opportunities, by opening doors, and by believing in ourselves foremost. So there's something very fascinating coming up where there's this interesting reflection of our sense of identity and our sense of belief that we can see in the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is still playing out, and then also in this eclipse. So I think there's a massive amount of processing. For one thing, I am recording this prior to the solar eclipse in Aquarius, and just after Saturn has moved into Aries, and it's starting to get a little bit bumpy. And I think that there's going to be a lot of weird stuff that winds up happening in the coming week or two. On the other side of that, through this eclipse, I think that we are processing a lot of that information overload, really. I think that we are processing, again, a lot of our beliefs about ourselves and the lives that we are able to create for ourselves around our identities and how we fit into this brave new world that we find ourselves in. Not to mention what we think about all of this, how we feel about all of this. So there's so much internal processing going on, trying to bring things back into a sense of cohesion and order again. I think after probably a bumpy couple of weeks that are coming up before this eclipse, again, from when I'm recording, that is one thing that Jupiter very much likes to do, is bring a sense of cohesion, order, understanding. And it's trying very hard to do that here. Now, additionally, with the Mercury retrograde ruling this eclipse, that does indicate, especially in Pisces, that there is some level of confusion. There's a big rethink going on. And some of that is going to have to do with what the Saturn-Neptune conjunction was speaking about when it was in Pisces for the past few years. So where have we become somewhat rigid in our belief, in our ideology, in our conceptions of the world and what it's capable of being, and how we can create that together? This is calling for a huge amount of flexibility and reflectiveness, slowing down, rethinking, opening our minds a bit more. But of course, initially, like I was saying, where it's almost like we're trying to figure out what we believe about this new world, rethinking things, slowing down, not needing maybe even to have an opinion on everything that's going on immediately, but just kind of chilling out, taking the information in, and trying to find what is real in that, which, as I get into the global stuff, I think it's going to be a taller order than it might sound like it is, because from a global perspective, this is actually a pretty weird kind of configuration. So we may find ourselves testing out our beliefs, checking in with them, reconfiguring them a bit. Now, beyond all of that, this is also a very spiritual, a very imaginative, a very creative kind of an eclipse as well. There's a lot of intuition here. I do think that it's going to feel like the veil is really thin during this period of time. That's something that can happen with eclipses, but that was noticeable during the eclipse that looked like this last September, where there's really good and helpful energy that's able to come through, but in quietude. This can give us some really wonderful ideas that we can patiently work through. This can help us to bring a sense of precision to our craft. And hopefully this can get us also back to a sense of idealism by testing and rethinking our beliefs, coming back to the importance of what we do believe in. Another factor that's really big here is matters of care and service, providing care, taking care of people, universal consideration of other people and their well-being. So we have tons of energy here in Pisces and Virgo, and that'll do it. But especially when it's configured in these flowing aspects to a Jupiter in Cancer, there will be this overwhelming desire to support others and to be supported. So hopefully we can see some decent organization around community care and things like that going on. And that should also help us with this other thing that I have here that I think is going to be quite important based on the degree meaning and so forth, which we're going to get into in a moment. But it's going to be really important to stay humble. The eclipse in Aquarius, the solar eclipse, the first one in this cycle, in this eclipse season, is really loud, and it's already starting to take down people of ego, let's say, and people of significant positions. And so the extent to which we can not place ourselves above others, I think is going to be really important. And I can only recommend, if you're feeling tired at all, again, if there's any confusion, to just slow down in this season. That's usually what we're supposed to be doing in eclipse seasons anyway, but especially with these kinds of configurations. Sometimes passivity is really the way to go, trying to just kind of let things sort themselves out. Now, I want to go through some of the meanings of where this eclipse is taking place, because I find that looking at the Sabian symbol for the degree, looking at the fixed stars that are there, looking at the decan that it's in can be really helpful for characterizing what we're dealing with. And so in terms of the decan that this is playing out in, this should be helpful. This should be useful to us. It is the second decan of Virgo, which is associated with the Nine of Pentacles. It's also associated with Venus. So there is an ability here to be productive, to be quietly and humbly productive, to create a sense of gain for ourselves, and to bring, again, back into a sense of order and safety and understanding our own lives at the very least. I think there's going to be attempts at order on the global level as well, but I think that's going to be a little bit more bumpy. Even the fixed star that's close to here, Coxa, is favorable in the sense of art and creativity and gains, sociability, creativity, idealism. So a lot of the themes that we were getting out of the configurations that are here are reinforced by that fixed star. But the challenging aspects of that star are indiscretion and scandal and foolhardiness, destructiveness, anxiety and self-seeking. So again, precisely the things that we would worry about in this area with this configuration, and especially coming out of that Aquarius solar eclipse. I think it's quite clear how we should approach our own lives, is not through overconfidence, not through stepping on others, but through a sense of quiet support of those around us. So with that said, let's definitely pivot toward these global messages. So looking at the decan here and what Austin Coppock's 36 Faces says about that, it is speaking to matters of production and industry. So we may see major news around jobs, around gains, around greed, around construction or building things. But what's interesting is even in this decan, there's this protection, this concealing, there's these layers that are covering. And in Virgo, what really would that be covering but information? And it's interesting to me that that is happening while we have that eclipse ruled by a retrograde, very debilitated Mercury, which is under the beams. So it is being, this Mercury itself, the ruler of this eclipse, is also getting concealed. So there's something that is trying to be covered up here for sure. There may be some, and it's probably around communications or information. So censorship or cover up is really huge in this. And furthermore, very fascinating Sabian symbol here, which is a powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. So for one thing, that mention of hysteria sounds to me like a reaction to the weird kind of stuff that we can expect from the Aquarius eclipse that I spoke about in the last video. And this Jupiter here, it does and has really, I think I mentioned this in the 2026 reading as well, is that this eclipse does look like Jupiter trying to assert a sense of order again at this point. But is this quote unquote powerful statesman being honest? Is this being done honestly? I'm not so sure about that. So things may seem somewhat chaotic, and there may be a desire or an attempt to overcome the reaction to that. And if that is done in a foolhardy manner, then that could be very destructive. That could create a lot of anxiety. So with these configurations, looking at this from a global level as well, again, lack of clarity is really the biggest theme here. This is a challenged eclipse for sure, especially on a global level where we're trying to maintain a sense of order. And this isn't just like, oh, let's all engage in spiritual practice. It's like, no, there is decision making going on, and there's a lack of clarity. There's some confusion around that, possibly even around procedure. I wouldn't be surprised if there are some procedural issues that wind up arising either in this moment where there are laws passed that are deemed to be illegal, or in this moment where there is confusion around what's allowed, what's not, what are the rules, what are the numbers, what is the information. That's another thing that I definitely expect to be rampant here is bad information, either tampered with, like intentionally bad information, or just for any other reason, that we're basing our decisions on information that isn't going to wind up holding up. So we may see some procrastination, some disengagement here. That may not be the worst thing, and we may be somewhat frustrated about seeing that kind of thing. But again, it's like that pulling back, that passivity, that rest that this eclipse is calling for. It's kind of calling for that on a global level as well, to slow down, to think things through, to let the information process before we're making these knee-jerk decisions about what we're doing and then just trying to sell it. So another thing that's going to be huge here is messaging. So even that powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria, we would expect that would include messaging as well. But with the ruler of this eclipse, they're with the sun. That does indicate like the sun is utilizing Mercury here, and it's utilizing Mercury in Pisces, which can be very propagandistic. It's about trying to create a sense of belief. It's about trying to stir up emotions. It's not about facts. And so people may be very well struggling to believe what's being said. We may need evidence and we may not be getting it. I do also worry a bit about censorship. This is a complicated kind of an alignment for speech as well. The configuration to Jupiter looks helpful there, so we could see that actually working out where the censorship was not effective, but may become something of an issue during this period of time. Or what I find very, very likely is this kind of cover up where the sun is actually blotting out this Mercury, which of course we tend to see in like documents, for instance, that Congress demands have to be released, and then they're over redacted in certain ways and under redacted in others, etc. So there may be something here about the rest of those documents, or what has been censored, what's been covered up, what there's been some hand waviness around. This looks very hand wavy to me. Additionally, we could see some backtracking with that retrograde Mercury too, where again, though it looks dishonest to me. So it looks to me like someone saying, oh, I never meant that, or oh, I never actually said that, when it's very evident that that was what was said. Trying to take things back that can't really be taken back, regretting things that are said, attempts to hold people accountable for what they've said. But beyond all of that, I also think that there will be something about public statements that will be quite significant too. So in terms of speeches, like again, this Sabian symbol is so weird and interesting. It's a powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. And the fact that I keep saying a powerful statement accidentally, it sounds to me like there is a powerful statement that's being made in terms of some kind of speech or something. But yeah, other than that, what else stands out to me about this chart? This is not evident from this configuration, but it's going to be a little bit mind-blowing. So the next planet that's going to cross that area of 12 degrees of Virgo that's going to reactivate this eclipse, that is going to be Venus, and it's going to be on the 21st of July of 2026. So if you know, you know, but I will also explain why that date is so crazy for this eclipse to get reactivated again. There's something in this moment that's going to be huge in the summer. So the reason why the 21st of July really stands out is that is the moment where we have this Pluto at 4 degrees of Aquarius, This Neptune will be at 4 degrees of Aries. Uranus will be at 4 degrees of Gemini. And this Jupiter will be at 4 degrees of Leo. We will have that Jupiter-Pluto opposition in the sky, and they will both be supported by Uranus and Neptune. So there is a powerful confrontation of powerful interests versus collective interests. There's a conflagration along those lines, and the universe seems to be supporting the playing out of that struggle, hopefully for good. And it's very much based in belief. It's very much based in ideology. It's based in, the systemic ways, the ordered ways in which the world works when we're dealing with all of these outer planets. And then we're dealing with like the legal system and systems of belief and so forth when we're dealing with Jupiter as well. So whatever's going on here, again, if we're frustrated about some procrastination or disengagement, this story isn't even over yet. There's some seed that's getting planted in this moment that's going to be a big part of that huge, probably, knock on wood, but probably overall really helpful to humanity clash that's coming up this summer in the July 19th, or peaking rather around the July 19th to about July 21st timeframe there. So there's something weird going on. This eclipse looks to me on a personal level like it's going to be quiet. Like we're going to be processing so much that we've been dealing with when it comes to who we are and what we believe in, especially whether we believe in ourselves or not, and sorting that out internally. So I think it's going to feel like spiritually, emotionally kind of internalized. We may even be, a lot of us, kind of tuning out and disengaging ourselves from what's going on in the world in this moment. And yet, on a global level, it looks to me like there's something about information and public belief and narrative that there's this kind of undertow of like a torrent of an undertow that's going on here that's playing out over time that I think is going to wind up being very, very, very substantial. So I also just want to throw out here the relevant charts that are getting activated by this alignment. And I'm mostly looking at within about a degree or two alignments, but totally feel free to drop more in the comments if you know of countries or leaders or anyone really that's getting hit up by this eclipse in a significant way. So this is going to be activating the Saturn of China in the 8th house of China, the Saturn of Benjamin Netanyahu in his 10th house. It's going to be close to the Saturn North Node of Iran and Greenland. That was the Saturn North Node conjunction that took place in 79. So they both have that configuration. We also have the Greenland chart from 2009. It's also on that Saturn. So we have both of the Saturns in Virgo of Greenland when it comes to specifically their autonomy, which is interesting. Those autonomy charts of 1979 and 2009, those are both getting activated. Russia's Jupiter is getting activated as well. This is going to be visible over a lot of the world. So most of the world except for Europe, West Asia, and Africa, except for that little tiny bit of the Gulf states. Those states it's just going to be just barely covering, which is interesting since the Aquarius eclipse has taken down the head of DP World already. This is also activating the charts of Rupert Murdoch, Lula da Silva, Barron Trump, Nayib Bukele, Pete Hegseth, Senator McCarthy from back in the day, which is interesting because of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which has a lot to do with hysteria over communism. Speaking of hysteria, political hysteria, actually, again, another weird little Freudian slip of mine. There may be something of a moral panic here as well from that Saturn-Neptune conjunction that's also getting reinforced by this lunar eclipse. It's not just around notions of communism or socialism or whatever, but it often is too. This is also activating the Uranus-Pluto conjunction of Kamala Harris, the Pluto of Walls, the Pluto of Nicolas Maduro. This is activating the chart of Hunter Biden and also, again, the Pluto of Ghislaine Maxwell. So we can see it's like that 64, 65 birth dates, that Pluto is getting activated by this alignment here. And this is also activating the chart of Joe Rogan. Now, finally, I also want to point out that Charlie Kirk was killed under the September eclipse that looked a lot like this one. So we will see, but that happened within a few days of that eclipse. He was killed on September 10th, and that eclipse was on September 7th. Additionally, the moon was in this place. It wasn't an eclipse, or it wasn't even like a full moon or anything, but the moon was in this place when Renee Good was killed too. So we may see something here too about some political violence. I pray not. But yeah, I think that is really a lot of what I want to say about this Virgo lunar eclipse. It's interesting reading it before we get to the Aquarius solar eclipse, because that one I think is really going to shape the weirdness, the instability that we're coming into this lunar eclipse with, that we're trying to bring back into a state of order, right? So we're trying with this eclipse to kind of clean up, I think, the mess that the solar eclipse made. But I don't know what that mess looks like quite yet. So we'll see how this winds up playing out. But yeah, I do want to thank you all so much for being here. I hope that this was helpful or interesting in some way. If it was, and you don't mind giving it a like or hype, I would really greatly appreciate that. It helps out so much. And do consider sticking around. If you are interested in transits, I tend to go through the major alignments that are coming up from a collective energetic level, from a global political level, and then taking it through sign by sign to see how that's going to be impacting all of our charts. So if that's of interest, I would love to have you here for future videos. There's also information in the description box below about personal readings, how to support the channel, membership perks, like weekly forecasts that we do, as well as monthly sessions over astrological topics, in addition to discounts and free reading drawings. So if that is of interest, check that out in the description. And other than that, thank you so much to the members of this channel for your support. Thank you so much to Angel Niblock, JJ, Michelle Howell, Deborah Keel-Leavitt, Jody, Anne Marie, C. Rezer, Peace Out, Rachel Windholtz, Aya, Lynn Newman, Long T Standing, The Nelson Cat Maya, Connie DiMartino, Dolly Geezy, Mango JT, B Love, Starlingly True, Psyche Lloyd, Noah, Maria Cyril Hyro, Aquarian Antiquarian, Susan Martin, Chad W, Jonathan Mason, Adrian K, SP, Teresa Jones, Sherry Leas, Nioke Beam, Farts and Chuckles, Create, Gil's Tarot and Astrology, Talitha McKenzie, K from NH, Patar Music, Nancy Imhoff, Peta Carlin, Sarah MCap, Angela Lazaire, Travis Dandro, Jane Bevan, Helena Fisher, Tina Reynolds, Sacred Alpaca, Natasha P, Indy Loon, Linda Skull, Marinouche Amiri, D Fish, Ellen McCormick Martins, Black Sheep, Pink Unicorn, Someone77, Attunement Tarot, Cookerzilla, Joshua Owen, J.A., Carrie Affronti, Mike, Lynn Cheng, Kiska Kuznetsova, Linda Osborne, Denise Gull, Many Stars, E.F., Zoe, Plamena Melanova, The Muslim Researcher, Dante Hill, Cameron Walker, Larissa F., A. Neon, Marlo Murphy, Allison Arthurson, Janelle S., Janet McCann, Gamine, CPT Alpha 12, Alina Bloomgarden, Mina Dobras, NG, Rebecca Cortez, Ricky Dandridge, Novocaine, Brandy Williams, Allison Elliott, Adia Freya, Willow Raven, Psychics and Mediums, Mason, HKW, MA, Nat Catnip, Shane V, Jesse, Aaron Paterson, Shell Hawkins, Amanda Emmons, Brenda Tucker, This Is It, My Friend, Tracy Gerdine, Sabrina Simon, JL, Grounded Fire, Shadow and Soul Revolution, Esther Swan, Victoria Gordon, Lizzie Willow, Emila Zoe, Scarlett Sparks, Patricia Cogley, Alex T, Kim Spina, Rachel Y, Ruby Payne, Valerie Hamilton, Gabriel Pages, Sunshine, Cat Alien, Am Patate, Rebecca Fusetti, Anna Jordan, Roxette De La Cruz, I Hate 1988, Patricia Ewing, Sylvia C., Jennifer Arena, Madcap Vlogs, Veronica Dubiel, Linda McCallum, Padme Moonflower, Jenny Tron, Joey M., B., Desiree Hamlin, Maria Paula Major, Blue Flame, Self Carry, Katie Scarlett, Mercurius Luna, Sandra Anderson, Marlena Kimber, Giselle Christine, Sasha Stargarden, Danny Baneyful, Stacy Starkey, Christy Pops MC, Cameron, Milana Rivera, Casey Ruzma, Petra S., Kelly Zarza, Peace Yarn and Paper, Lakshana, Mused Wellness, Palobiant, One of Many, Monique Bird, Pample Granite, Deb Wrights, Jean Desud, Melissa Campbell, Charles Oganike, Susanna, Jenna Martindale, Big Steppa AD, Siobhan, Nick Stewart, WGG Photo, Zenki, Wana, Big Sky 25, I Am Just Me, RG, Maria Brandusa, Coleman, Lydia Wilcox, Follow the Moon and Grab the Stars, Candace Harris, Stephanie Saunders Suskind, Angela C., Andres Alcayaga, Sherry Hadfield, Amanda, Rusina Velev, Belen Valadares, Alma Reinhold, Karen Charis, and Amy Odom. Thank you all so much. Much love to you. And without any further ado, let's get into the sign by sign. All right, so for Aries, we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your 6th house. And this house has a lot to do with your work, the tasks you do, your daily routines, as well as health habits, things like this. So there's some sort of culmination or a shift, a change that's going to take place in this area that you'll need to adjust to. This could be literally in your working life. So some routine or some pattern or some habit or something like this that's related to your work needing to change. This can also speak to coworkers coming and going, some sort of turnover within your working life. This can have to do with taking on additional tasks or hopefully maybe asserting some boundaries if you feel like you are taking on too much and being able to offload some in that way. So there may need to be some boundaries here as well with your coworkers, your obligations, to make sure that you're not taking on too much. Because this can definitely also speak to feeling burnt out or feeling overexhausted from your work. Pushing, and trying to be productive, but just feeling depleted. So it's likely that you'll need to speak up about that you will need to communicate about that. But of course, this eclipse is ruled by retrograde Mercury and Pisces in your 12th house, so you may be very shy about doing so. That said, the way that this is configured to Jupiter, you should at least be able to find some help within your family if this is that you're putting in too much when it comes to your family and your working life. Some relief should be able to come in on the family front there. Also, being really honest with yourself about your health habits, making the adjustments that are required, maybe checking in on, are you even taking your vitamins and minerals, things like this? Are you filling in any nutritional gaps? Are you avoiding the types of things that you know give you issues? Are you active, like at all? At all is certainly better than not at all. Do you want to be more active? Should you be? This can help to clear out any bad habits that you may have just kind of fallen into with regard to your health. And if that is something that you've addressed somewhat recently, maybe you've fallen off a little bit, this is going to be one of our later, I think there's one more lunar eclipse that we're going to get in Virgo next year. But then we're wrapping it up in this sign. So this is when we really want to solidify the improved habits that we have developed over the past couple of years. So this can be a really great reminder to pull you back into those things, and especially to finding a rhythm that actually supports your body and that actually works for you. So a rhythm with your work, your errands, your obligations to other people, the sense that you feel a duty to other people. Are they returning the favor? Are you feeling supported by those around you? If not, again, this is a Mercury-ruled moon. Regardless of whether there may be a little bit of shyness for you to speak up about this, it does also indicate that there's something that needs to be discussed here. And I think that may actually go over quite a bit better than you're expecting. Additionally, if you feel burnt out, if you feel like you've been over-functioning, with the stellium that we have out here in Pisces in your 12th and then Jupiter in your 4th, you may just want to withdraw for a bit and not focus solely on productivity or what you can get done. This isn't the best time to be front loading a bunch of work, at least for several weeks here. Like I would say halfway into March at least. Give yourself, your body, a little bit of a break. Try and reconfigure your schedule. Try to manage your obligations. Try to remind yourself that it's okay for you to speak up if you are feeling pretty tired. And just really fully check in again with your sense of well-being and make the adjustments required. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Aries. It's going to be one of the somewhat more low-key ones, although you may, again, feel pretty burnt out or pretty busy. But the advice here is pretty clear of pull back, withdraw a little bit, and speak up about the fact that you are burnt out. So yeah, I hope that this eclipse treats you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Taurus, we have this lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your 5th house. And this is the house of your pleasures and joys. This is also the place of what you create, including your children. There's a lot of inspiration and just general creativity, imagination, self-expression in this place as well. It's a really wonderful, beautiful house. It's associated with Venus as being the joy of Venus in the 5th house. So there's likely to be a lot of emotional clarity around what brings you pleasure, around the right that you have, the prerogative that you have to enjoy your life, to reclaim your own sense of joy. You may have found, especially very, very recently, in fact, you've had Saturn and Neptune up in your 11th house for a while. So you, on the other side here, you may have found that you've been trying to please others, that you've been trying to accommodate others for quite some time. And you may have been backburnering some of your own joy, some of your own pleasure, your own lighthearted, wonderful aspects of your life that are independent of other people. And you may have needed to, or felt the need to justify that which you pursue simply for the sake of pleasure. But that's no place for Taurus to be in. What is pleasurable and joyful for you is very important. What feels good, what feels right is very important. Again, the 5th house being the joy of Venus, well, Taurus is also associated with Venus. So this is an important part of your life. Creativity, crafts, imagination, the arts, hobbies, interests, the finer, nicer, more pleasant things in life. So try to give yourself permission to really go all in on those things, regardless of what other people think, regardless of whether you know people who share the same interests as you. Carve out time for that. And also probably try to carve out time where you're able to engage in that kind of thing without at all thinking about how it's going to be received. So for instance, if you are an artist, maybe creating some time, not just to produce art to show, but to produce art just for the enjoyment of it, as one example. And this can also wind up representing a real turning point in a creative project. Or this is the 3rd Virgo eclipse that we've had so far in a series of 4. We're going to get one more lunar eclipse next Pisces season, so in 2027 as well. And you may have in 2025, when we got the 2 previous a lunar and then solar eclipse in Virgo, you may have gone in a creative direction. You may have started to pursue these things. And this could represent a real turning point. So for instance, if you pursued a creative hobby, this could be you really starting to feel comfortable with it. This could be you getting the courage to put what you have created for your own enjoyment out there and not worry about justifying it and not worry about how it's received, but just sharing of yourself and sharing of your joy without being perfectionistic with yourself about that. Also, with this being the place of things that you create, this house is also associated with children. Children, generally speaking, but especially your own children. So if you do have kids, this can also indicate a substantial period of time in their lives or something that is strongly affecting them, that is in turn affecting you. So they may be going through a specific developmental stage. They may be individuating some more. They may be finding their own passion. If they're older, maybe they are having children as well. Regardless of what these changes are, with this taking place in Virgo, talking things out, if there is anything that needs to be clarified, if there's any sort of honesty that needs to be worked on, communication is going to be really excellent. Being understanding, being patient, and making sure that the lines of communication are open should serve super well with any of those changes, whether they're joyous or whether they are complicated. But yeah, ultimately this then speaking to these changes, they may be literal in some sense, but they are also encouraging a shift in your relationship or a development in your relationship with your children. This can even speak to releasing any sort of perfectionistic or self-critical qualities that you took on in youth. So inner child work can be very well supported by eclipses in the 5th too. Maybe even reconnecting to some childhood joy would be a wonderful way to actively express and utilize this eclipse. You may even really learn something funny and new about yourself that was kind of always there under the surface, but maybe you just never really thought about. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you with this eclipse. It's definitely not bad. It's pretty good alignment for you. So I do hope that it treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Gemini, we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your 4th house. So this is likely to go in one of two general kinds of directions. This is the house of home and family, but it's also the house of your emotional core. So it's likely to go in that literal sense of shifts and changes with regard to your home and family, or this is likely to be a fundamentally emotional eclipse that is going to be encouraging you to release some patterns that you've picked up on from the past or maybe from your family that's rooted in some way in your lineage. So let's do the kind of literal sense of this first. There may be some major shifts or changes that are required with regard to your home or your family situation. This can be needing to make changes to your home. This can be needing to move. This can be people moving in and out, and the composition of your home and those you're living with changing. If there is something that's going on with property, quite literally, that looks pretty decent here. Now, there may be some delays. For instance, if you're buying or selling property, there may be some delays inherent in that whole process, but it does look weirdly well favored within the context of this eclipse. The reason for that is that it is ruled by a Mercury that's retrograde, up in the 10th house of maybe needing to make some big decisions and things like that. And that's retrograde. But that Mercury itself is also tied into, as well as this eclipse, the sun and moon, tied into this Jupiter that's also retrograde, but it's in your 2nd house. So the relationship here is very, very favorable to any sort of property moves. Additionally, you may find that your role within family is shifting or changing, that your relationship with some family members is impacted by this. There may be a lot of communication or unusual communication, unusual news regarding family. There may even be some unusual honesty with family, some significant or deeper conversations that are going on. You may even notice that your home life, so the way that your routine goes at home, your domestic routine basically, but also that time where you're kind of retiring and you're stepping out of your public life, that is experienced differently. So you may be intentionally shifting those routines, but that is also really encouraged. So looking at how you spend your time at home, how you spend your downtime, maybe improving upon that in a way that's going to make you feel better and feel like it is improving your energetic resources for the day. Again, part of the reason for that being the sextile from that eclipsed moon to Jupiter in your 2nd house. So you may get some really wonderful insights about how you can use your downtime in order to increase your resources, and not just on a financial or property level, but also energetically, or even to feel a sense of increased personal value through now the more esoteric aspect of this being those emotional patterns that are rooted in the past. So those are kind of regardless likely to be coming up here on some level, possibly quite loudly, where you may be recognizing that you have been conditioned in certain ways by your family, likely, or by experiences in the past that have been quite emotional, that have hit you in a certain way, where there are some coping mechanisms that have then been activated and become habitual in ways that you feel like you should change during this time, or that are coming up because they can change. Any sort of expectations about your emotional experience of life. There is an ability with this eclipse to release those things. So look at your emotional habits and patterns, even on a day-to-day basis. Again, maybe checking in on how you feel when you are at home, when you're not really doing much. What is that emotional baseline, and how is it maybe that you can bring that up? What are some of the things that you tend to ruminate on, or any deep core wounds, even from childhood, that you can put your finger on? You may want to look at those. You may kind of have to look at those. I wouldn't be surprised if there's going to be moments here where things from the past just kind of wash over you. If that is the case, it's not just to make you emotional. It is to help you to process those things. It's an encouragement to look at those things again. And all of this is really realigning you in the sense of your core, your security, your home, your sense of rootedness and belonging, as well as what you feel like, therefore, from that base, that steady internal base, what you are capable of achieving in the world as well. So redefining on your own terms your notions of security as well. And if that means needing to shed some familial judgments or some familial standards that don't work for you, this would really encourage that kind of thing. And there may need to be some discussions around that as well with this in Virgo. And you may even find yourself like writing this out, or even trying to structure what needs to be released, what needs to be worked on, journaling quite a bit, and actively trying to purify and process what's going on within. But yeah, I think that those are all of the themes that I wanted to point out with this lunar eclipse. So I do hope that it treats you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Cancer, we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your third house. This is the house of your community, the people, places, things around you, communication, learning, exchange. So you're likely to run into some very significant conversations or thoughts that you're having, ideas that you're having, decisions that you're needing to make during this period of time, ones that have a greater sense of consequence to them than usual. So you may be talking about more serious conversations, like more serious topics, or just have people taking what you're saying somewhat more seriously. You could even have a conversation that seems to illuminate a connection that you have with someone, for better or worse, or be making some decisions which you may or may not even be fully aware of how consequential or significant those decisions are going to be, but they're likely to stick with you for some time. Now, there can also be changes in how you communicate, changes in how you connect with people, who you are connecting with, what kinds of ideas and conversations you're interested in having with people. You may even be setting some boundaries around that, around what you do and don't want to have to deal with when it comes to how people are approaching you. And you may even be evaluating or reevaluating who you have around you. So there may be changes with some of your siblings or your close community contacts in that sense of deciding to connect more with certain people or connect less with them due to how you feel about their influence over you and your thought process and your mind. Or there could be changes that are going on with them, like as in their lives, that somehow impacts you, or that you are helping them to make decisions around, that you are working as like a sounding board for people. You may also find yourself feeling an urge to write or to journal or something like this. This may have come up a bit in recent months as well, like say last Pisces season, there was a lunar eclipse in Virgo as well. So this may be a continuing thing that you are pursuing, writing more or journaling, and there may just be an additional pivot along those lines. Maybe you're trying to journal more how you feel about things rather than specifically what's happening. Maybe your writing style is shifting as well. But this is also a place of learning. So how you take in information and how you sort it out. And you may be either wrapping up or starting up a course that's likely to be quite significant for you as well, either due to the content of what you're learning or due to the habit of maybe this can be something that you're doing regularly, maybe taking courses on the side or something and finding that you love to do that. But yeah, otherwise, this is just about like clearing the air both within yourself. So addressing any sort of mental clutter or challenging habits like distractions or procrastination, seeking mental stimulation, anxieties, things like this. The stuff that goes on basically in your mind. Any sort of habits along those lines that have been difficult, this does offer a major opportunity to eclipse some of that out, to remove some of that, to reorganize and reprioritize what you want to be thinking about and sorting out, focused on. And then again, when it comes to your communication, this also brings up a really wonderful opportunity to focus on being really honest with your voice and representing yourself truly. So speaking with more personal honesty, feeling less guilty about just saying what you need or having those either mental or communicative boundaries up, being willing to say no to certain things, being willing to speak your mind as well. Sometimes we can be a bit shy about that, and this would encourage doing that differently. And again, this is playing into an unfolding process that started last year. So if these are some things that you've been working on in 2025, this is going to wind up reinforcing those changes, maybe internalizing some of those new habits. If there's been a back and forth with a sibling that's been challenging, this is another phase of that, figuring that out. If you've had a neighbor move, this could be someone finally moving into that house. So looking at your community, who you communicate with, your siblings, your ideas, your mind, this is punctuating and reinforcing the intentional changes that you've been trying to make there, as well as some of the events that have been unfolding. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Cancer. So I do hope that this treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Leo, we have the Virgo Lunar Eclipse taking place in your second house. And this is the house of your finances, your personal resources, what you value, what you want to grow more of in your life. So quite literally, income usually shows up here, as well as assets, particularly movable property. So the things that you own and the money in your accounts and your income, right? On a literal level. So expect some changes along those lines. Now, that doesn't mean, there's going to be some financial issue, the bottom's going to fall out or anything like that. Not at all necessary. You actually have already had some lunar eclipses in this house in recent years. So there may have been some shifts and changes. This can be part of that developing story. You may be trying to get more clear and more precise about your budgeting and trying maybe to save for a specific kind of purchase that you're wanting to do. You may be evaluating some of your spending habits. You may even be evaluating your earning habits. If, for instance, maybe you work with clients or something and there's a direct relationship between how much you work and how much you make from that. But this could also indicate a payoff. And there may be something that's kind of funky about that payoff. Maybe it is a rare kind of a thing where it's a one-off situation. Maybe there's money that's coming in from another party. Maybe it's a bonus. Maybe you're literally selling something. And again, that's kind of a one-off thing where, okay, there's something extra and unusual that's coming in there. But all of this is to help with a sense of financial realignment. So that's what the eclipses do, is they realign us. They make sure that we're on the correct track for you when it comes to what you value and your finances and your sense of safety and security. So there's a reason for the changes that may wind up arising from about mid-February to about mid-March. Now, this to me, though, isn't just about money. So there's so much psychological material to our relationship with money and with value that I think underpins a lot more of what goes on in this house, and that I think that eclipses and things like this can speak to a little bit more directly. So if you have any issues around your personal value, around evaluating yourself honestly and correctly, if you have like a kind of skewed image of what your value is, usually we tend to undervalue ourselves and our own skills relative to other people. And when we get into those comparisons, we usually will see ourselves coming up short, even though that's probably not the case, right? So if there's any sort of a scarcity mindset or habits or things like that that you've developed, maybe through actual experiences of scarcity a bit earlier in life, or just through a sense that having that mindset is better than having a kind of freewheeling attitude toward finances, this can have you realigning and being a little bit more honest with yourself about where you're at and what your value is. Your even quite literally your financial standing, being able to see that in a more honest light. And this can be personal value as in what some people call self-esteem or self-worth. I kind of like the sense of personal value a little bit more. And as I mentioned, with the realignment here, there's also this reprioritization, reevaluation of your personal resources. And that's not just, again, the things that you have or the income that you're bringing in. This is also a matter of your personal resources, as in your attitudes, your mindset, your intelligence, your skills, your kindness, right? All of these things that you identify with that are traits or aspects of you, who you are, even your worldview, right? Your literal values are an aspect of your personal resources. So reevaluating all of those things, you may be just kind of looking through what needs to be prioritized right now. Because, for instance, at different parts in our career, we may be focusing on really showcasing our hard skills. But as those are proven, then it can become actually much more valuable to us financially if we can really show off some of our soft skills, our people skills, our management skills, things like this. So even if you want to look at it in this productive kind of a perspective, what is valuable to you on a personal level, but also what is really valuable that you possess and that you're able to offer to the world? So being really honest about all of these things and sizing them up again, reevaluating, reprioritizing along all of those lines. But yeah, I hope that makes sense. And I hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right. So for Virgo, we have the Virgo Lunar Eclipse taking place in your first house. This is the place of yourself, your personality, how you interface with the world, the roles that you play, the masks that you wear. This is also a place of your body. So just all aspects of yourself show up in this place, and also where basically the world meets you. So you are likely feeling a major personal change or shift in your sense of self, your personal identity, your self-image, the roles that you feel that you need to play, the masks you feel that you need to wear, the way that you look at yourself relative to other people. And this has probably been somewhat ongoing. This is the third out of 4 eclipses that I'm remembering in Virgo. We had one last Pisces season, a lunar eclipse. We had a solar eclipse in Virgo season. We have this lunar eclipse, and then next Pisces season, we will have another lunar eclipse in your first house. So this is the more than halfway point in that whole process, but it is a substantial and punctuated period in that unfolding. So this unfolding of a new, lighter version of yourself, having stripped away any sort of false notions of yourself or limitations or self-criticism, self-doubt, anything that just isn't serving you anymore. With the South Node having gone through your first house and this lunar eclipse, this is offering you an opportunity to offload all aspects of an outdated version of yourself, to end a chapter that is tied to a form of self-criticism or a form of like restriction that's no longer honest, that's no longer real, that you don't need to follow anymore. And that if you do follow that, it's just going to wind up caging you in. So stepping into that new version of yourself, and probably a much more grounded version of yourself, something that is very reflective of reality and what you're genuinely capable of, which is much more honest about who you are and what you enjoy, who you want to connect with, even embracing quote unquote flaws or things that you feel like other people would critique. Really taking those on. If those are aspects of yourself, maybe they're not flaws. Maybe they're just a part of you. So yeah, there's all this big picture stuff about who you are and release along those lines so that you can feel more yourself on the other side of this. Now, additionally, this is the house of your own body. So you may find that you're going to feel a bit tired. You may have that kind of heightened body awareness that I have written here, like sensitivities may seem to flare up. If you know that, I'll give you an example. When I eat gluten, I certainly don't die, but I get breakouts and I get bloated, So those kinds of things, the volume on that may get turned way up such that you have to address that. You have to give that up. If there's anything low key that you've been kind of knowing is going on, but maybe you haven't totally known the source of it, this can help you with some correct information about that. Like if you don't know what's causing an issue, if you've been wondering maybe why you play small, even if you have been wondering why in certain environments you feel off, this can help just immensely with getting a sense of mental clarity on that so that you're able to address what you are of greater awareness about. So whether that be releasing outdated versions of yourself or releasing allergens, releasing certain people that make you feel a certain way, not subjecting yourself to certain scenarios or environments that make you feel a certain way, check in with your body, and that should help a lot with understanding where you're being drawn and where you're being pushed away from, basically, during this eclipse season. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you this time around. So I do hope that this eclipse treats you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Libra, we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your 12th house. And this is the place of things that are hidden, generally speaking, but also the subconscious, your internal world, your imagination. This is a place of solitude, of retreat, of spirituality, even the sense of belief and faith that there is something beyond you that's able to support you or help you. So there's something closing out here or coming to a culmination point where there's a required shift or change. And it's likely to be somewhat emotional. So some kind of emotional or subconscious release of a sort. Now, this can be a habit, an internal mental habit, or even like an internal dialogue habit. This can have to do with conditioning, with your subconscious expectation of how things go. So just when you approach things, do you generally have like a positive expectation of how things will go, or are you a bit skeptical? There may be some kind of a pattern there that could be doing better or that could be more helpful to you. And there may be a pattern of maybe like expecting the worst even, or expecting to not have control over a situation that some way or another needs to be let go of during this period of time. And the volume on something like that may get increased such that it's more apparent to you so that you are more aware of when you may do those things. So if there is some mental noise, feeling less well than usual on an emotional or a mental level, if you're feeling a bit depressive, if you're feeling extra anxious, any of those kinds of things. During this eclipse season, it's not just to be harmful or frustrating to you. It is trying to point out there's something here. And if you were to release it substantially, you would probably feel better even at your baseline. This could even have something to do with notions of overgiving. in the 12th house, this can be a place where we are very compassionate, but also very self-sacrificing to other people. We can even wind up self-sabotaging ourselves in this house as well, in the 12th house. So if there are any patterns that you have along those lines of, again, overgiving or over-sacrificing or feeling like you need to give more of yourself than you expect of other people, that's also likely to be a bit louder and more noticeable during this time, so that you can let those kinds of things go and address them. You're also likely to find that for you, the veil is weirdly thin. So in terms of intuitive hits, in terms of if you do any sort of divination, if you are an intuitive, if you kind of know how to work with that energy, the volume of that is also going to be way higher. So messages should be coming through a lot clearer. You may even find new communication methods along those lines, especially with regard to a sense of your higher self or guardian angels or that which you feel is very close to you spiritually as an energy. You may also find that there's some kind of internal or subconscious closure that you feel about something, where it may feel a bit melancholic, but there's this willingness to release something that you may have struggled to let go of for some time. So maybe this is like a really old relationship or friendship or something, a job, whatever, like something that maybe went awry at some point. Maybe you've held on to that for a while, and you've maybe gotten closure on a lot of different aspects of it, but it just still works under the surface for you for some reason. And this may be one of those moments where you're just able to let it go a bit more and feel more accepting and okay with something that needed to end. But yeah, other than all that, what I can recommend here is this will be encouraging more rest, more solitude, more spiritual practice. And for you, you may feel very, very, very tired. You may also find that your relationship with sleep over the month or so, that's plus and minus 2 weeks from the 3rd of March, so say from mid-February to about mid-March, you may have a very weird relationship with sleep. You may feel a bit like you've got too much insomnia, and then like you're sleeping really intensely and like you need more sleep. And I can only recommend trying to accommodate that as much as you can. Try not to just push your way through. I know that with Mars going through your 6th house on the other side of this, that's probably going to have you feeling a little bit restless about getting things done. But at the very least, if you can just do what you can do very productively and then step back, try not to overdo it. I think that that'll help quite a bit. And also, again, just kind of checking back in with your emotional state, with your spiritual state. Do you feel good? Do you feel centered? Do you feel steady? Do you feel emotionally and mentally sound during this period of time? If not, pulling back a little bit, retreating a bit, finding some sense of solitude and even quietude, I think that that's going to help a huge amount with any sort of restlessness that you have during this time. But yeah, I think that that is pretty much what I have for you, Libra. So I do hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Scorpio, we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your 11th house. This is the place of your personal goals and aspirations, that which you are reaching for, which you are trying to achieve, especially in your public life. And this is also a place of your friendships and alliances, so group affiliations. So you're likely to see some shifts and changes along all of those lines. This may have started up already in some senses last year, of feeling like some of your aspirations are being realigned toward newer, different future goals for yourself. And if that's already been kicking up, then this is likely to be a significant moment in the pursuance of those things. So reconsidering and reevaluating where you're at with a long-term goal or vision, checking in, maybe making some really significant progress around this period of time, or even pivoting a bit more. So you may have taken something quite new on in 2025 in this area. The reason I say that is you've already had one lunar and one solar eclipse in Virgo in 2025. And then there's this lunar eclipse, and then you'll get another lunar eclipse next March timeframe as well. So you're in progress, basically, of a process here of shifting your aspirations. Now, this can be where you are tweaking around the edges, where you're looking at that and you're like, well, I want to adjust this a bit. I've learned something from pursuing this up until this point, and I just want to change it a little bit. You may even be recognizing that there are certain people that are not going to be coming with you on that new journey, that new path that you've laid out for yourself. And you may even be discovering how some people have held you back from these goals in the past or up until this point. So this is weirdly helpful for clarifying who's really on your team, though this can come through in the way of kind of increasing the volume on a standout that's not really on your team, such that you have to be really honest with yourself. There's this kind of emotional truth about your community and about the people that you're connected to. And again, who's really on side. Now, you may even discover that you feel kind of like you're the only main one in your own corner. And that may be something that you're needing to work with for now. You may really need to be spurring yourself on and encouraging your own self toward your own goals throughout this period of time, and not worrying so much about what other people think or if they're going to help or if they will be there, but rather trust that the right people will be there when you get to where you're trying to get to. So when we go through these pretty big changes in our aspirations and our goals, certainly we can find that some people fall away, but usually once we get ourselves there, then we find that there are others that we belong to in this new version of ourselves. So there may be some significant emotional truth that's coming up about where you belong, who you belong with, that is causing some of the dynamics within your friendships or the groups that you belong to shift. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, I guess it seems kind of a bit more straightforward than a lot of the other signs. I will just say and kind of reiterate here with the South Node going through your 11th, you are encouraged to step back a bit from the social expectation, from other people's standards, for other people's rules for you, for trying to people please, etc., trying to fit in. This is much more about pursuing your own goals than anything else. And if people can get on board, then wonderful. Maybe you can even discover that there are some really trustworthy, wonderful people in your life through this process. But if others wind up growing apart from you, then that's part of the cost, right? Of being really honest with yourself. And there may be a moment that brings that into the fore quite significantly in this like February, March timeframe here. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Scorpio. It is actually a very nice eclipse to have up in your 11th house. But paying attention to what's going on in your friendships, I think is going to be very illuminating. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you. So I hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. Right. So for Sagittarius, we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your 10th house. This is the house of your public image. So the role, the position that you fill out in the world, what you're known for. Now, if you have a traditional career, this is usually speaking quite directly to that, to like your career position. But if you are retired or you are a parent that focuses on parenting, anything like that, then what's showing up here is what you're known for. So that aspect of your public image. So this is pointing to some kind of a culmination or a turning point along these lines. This can speak to shifts and changes within your career. This can speak to like going into a different position. This can be either problematic or wonderful. I hate to say, like it can be, okay, the company is downsizing, etc. But not remotely is that necessary. This can absolutely also be a promotion or something. The important thing with this is that because it's an eclipse, what it's doing is it's realigning you intentionally. So it's not just if there is, for instance, okay, there's downsizing, maybe there's just fear around that. Maybe this fear winds up causing you to step up in a way that actually does wind up leading to a promotion, and in some way, like, you know, a year down the road when we get another lunar eclipse in this 10th house for you, Or maybe this is pushing you out of a position so that you step into the right thing. So it is an intentional realignment, whatever this culmination or turning point is. But again, like I said, this can totally also speak to a promotion or just like a departmental shift or a position opening up that you're wanting to step into. But it is a realignment. If you are retired, this is very likely, if you're active in your community, to be showing up there. If your main roles tend to center around your family, if those are a lot of your connections, this is likely to be showing up in that way in terms of your position within family shifting and changing. Now, you may also be getting recognition in a way that's quite unusual. This is an unusual full moon that's very bright up in your 10th house of recognition. So that may be coming in an interesting kind of a way. This could be coming in, again, through a family role that you have. If it's coming through in your career, it's very likely due to something specific and unusual that you are bringing to the table with the light of that full moon coming from the 4th house there, or how you comport yourself, how you carry your energy and then share it with others. This can also signal an ending. One thing I should point out is this can also be like an authority figure within your working life, within your career, them shifting gears, and that being quite significant for you as well. This could be like a boss that is stepping aside. And that, of course, changes the trajectory, even in a sense of your own career, especially if there's someone else that's stepping in or if everyone is moving up. But again, that would be a really fascinating thing for this to be pointing out. Because not only would that be on the nose, but it would also be indicating that them changing what they're doing is fundamentally impacting your path. So it can be that someone needed to step aside or needed to change something about maybe the company that you work for. If you work for yourself, again, this can be recognition or clients or something that where you're getting notice in an unusual way. You may also find yourself in a new or almost bespoke kind of leadership role. So you may be put in charge of something where you're able to really shine and get a lot of recognition for your leadership of that. And this can also help a lot with these notions of success and what you are wanting to accomplish, who you are wanting to be seen as. Also, on a more personal, internal level, redefining your own notions of success, claiming that more for yourself, not comparative to other people, not based on what paths other people have trodden. This may be you finding that you need to go on your own path or do that your own way to climb your own ladder, maybe build your own ladder as you're climbing it even. So redefining success on your own terms and therefore releasing any attachment to outdated roles. So you don't need to follow someone else's path or something that has been set out for you. You can do your own thing here and even be really propelled in doing so and get a lot of recognition for following a very unique path during this period of time. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Sagittarius. So I do hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Capricorn, we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your 9th house. This is the house of the expansion of your own personal horizons, either internally in the form of greater knowledge or externally in the form of greater and a wider range of experience. So on a literal level, this often has to do with beliefs, philosophies, higher education, and travel. So you're likely to see some shifts, some changes, some significant events taking place along some of those lines for you. Either changes in your belief system or your philosophies, a reprioritization or a reorganization of your values, the truths that you live by, even your own beliefs about yourself and what you're capable of. If there are any limitations like self-doubt or things like this lunar eclipse can point that out such that you're able to try to address that, maybe release some difficult self-belief. You're also likely to have some significant events or culmination around travel or education, possibly even publishing if you have a blog or you put yourself out there in the world in some way. You may find yourself having an opportunity to travel, maybe even to move far away. If it's not specifically traveling, then I would expect for you to be kind of exploring different places. So even within your community, places that you haven't been, places that are less familiar to you, maybe even trying experiences that are unfamiliar to you. When it comes to education as well, this can certainly point to a graduation, but also to, again, a reprioritization. So you may decide that you're wanting to take a course or even wanting to pursue a degree or certification or something like this around this eclipse. If you've started doing something like that recently, because this is part of a series of eclipses that started in 2025, this can be a really strong punctuation point within all of that, where you feel like you understand why you've been pursuing that more. Or you may even decide to pivot within that. If you are pursuing a kind of course of study, you may decide that you want to make a change to that as well. Also, when it comes to your beliefs and philosophies, your worldview shows up in this place. So how you see the world and that which is familiar, how you see your place in it, what you think of different ideas, different cultures, different people. If there's anything rigid there, this can also have you confronting that. Like, for instance, if you have any assumptions about different countries or anything, you may meet someone from a country and be surprised by how they are or what they believe. You'll certainly find yourself quite curious along those lines. So this could also be really wonderful for just digging way into documentaries and learning about things that you haven't spent a lot of time with yet. And that doesn't just have to be humanities or worldview. It can also, of course, be, science or any sort of other academic or thoughtful topics or subjects. And again, on a similar theme to beliefs, philosophies, worldviews, this can all shift due to witnessing something that, again, is outside of your usual assumptions and frameworks, something that seems to challenge them, that you can't quite unsee. And this may then push you in a different direction when it comes to your beliefs. So sometimes we have these experiences on a spiritual level where we have a spiritual experience and we just have to embrace that. And then we wind up growing in that direction of embracing more and more our own spiritual connection. But someone may also be showing some true colors or presenting themselves or a topic or something in a way that, again, you just can't unsee it. You can't sweep it under the rug. There's a change that's necessary in order to adapt to that new information. But yeah, ultimately, this is just about realigning your sense of meaning and philosophy and perspective on the world with your current lived experience. So this can be a major update to your philosophy, to your worldview, etc., to your range of experience that's called for and that's helping you to realign yourself, to realign your perspectives with your own sense of truth, of what the world is and what your place is in it. So keep in mind that self-belief also plays into this quite a bit. What do you think is possible for you in the world? This is helping you to see that more clearly. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Capricorn. So I do hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Aquarius, we have the lunar eclipse in Virgo taking place in your 8th house. This is the place of sharing, so shared resources, shared ties, those that you're committed to, karmically or contractually, those that you depend on and that depend on you. So those kinds of entanglements that we can create with other people and what it is that we share with others. So you're likely to see a shift or a change, some significant events taking place in this area of your life with regard to emotional or financial entanglements that you may have. Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be with a specific person that you're tied to or a specific entity that you're tied to, maybe with a debt or something. But this can also be to your attitude with regard to dependencies. This could be pointing out certain attitudes toward dependency that you're wanting to reevaluate, that you're wanting to have shift or that should be shifting in order maybe even to open you up to a connection that you otherwise may have blocked off due to some trust issues or to prevent you from getting involved in something due to not enough trust issues, right? Depending on where you're at, this is indicating that you should take a strong look at, and likely will be forced to take a strong look at, how you perceive of matters of trust and vulnerability and sharing commitments. So on a psychological level, it's likely to come up in those ways. Now, this can feel like a culmination where you may be releasing a tie to someone. You may be bringing something up to another level if you have developed and worked on trust and you are now reevaluating a connection as more solid or more resilient, or if you're just at a point in your life where you feel that you are able to trust. But also on a literal level, when it does come to any sort of shared resources that you have, any contracts that you have with others, any debts that you may be holding, when it comes to inheritances or financial ties along those lines, there's also likely to be significant developments with those. So this could be paying off a debt, really wanting to, or pushing or recognizing, wow, if I just kind of stepped this up, maybe made 50% more payment or something, I could get done with this debt at this date, and that would be awesome to have it off my back or something like this. Or wanting to take something on. So you may be really needing to get a new car or something, and this can be encouraging you to take a look at your budget, your finances, and possibly take something like that on, take on a new loan. You may also find that you are looking at the dependencies in your life. Are you dependent on others in a way that is less than ideal, or vice versa? Are there people dependent on you that you wish were not? This is also likely to force that issue, either pushing you to be more independent or pushing someone else to be more independent, or maybe even pushing you to push someone else to be more independent, right? And the more honest, the more communicative, the more out in the open that you can make that, I think the better, because of the fact that this is a Virgo eclipse. It is ruled by Mercury. And even though that Mercury is in Pisces and there may be some confusion that arises, still better to discuss these things than to try and sweep them under the rug in an eclipse season, which is going to force the issue anyway. Now, also in the 8th house, we can find a lot of resilience. We can find those moments where we fear that we might not be able to take care of ourselves, but we ultimately can. Where we fear that we might not be able to have a difficult conversation with someone, but again, we can. And so the self-control that we can get overexcited about, like trying not to rub people the wrong way, trying not to kind of piss people off or get the wrong energy out of people. That to me also shows up in the 8th house quite a bit. So trying to manage the energies of other people, that is a resource of the other. So the 8th house, that figures in quite strongly. And we can wind up with issues of control over ourselves, over trying to control the emotional state of other people so that we don't feel like there's a security or safety issue for us. So you may also find that there's just this kind of psychological release along those lines of not feeling the need to be responsible for what other people are doing or what's going on within other people, and allowing for them to be responsible for their own state. Doing your own thing and letting them get on the same page if they will, and if they won't, not feeling the need to be responsible for that. And that may be a really fundamental lesson that winds up coming out of this, is just that we can't control what's going on within other people or how they wind up reacting to that. But yeah, I think that is a lot of the themes that I wanted to go over for this eclipse with you, Aquarius. So I do hope that this eclipse treats you super well. And thank you so much for spending this time with me. All right, so for Pisces, we have the Virgo Lunar Eclipse taking place in your 7th house. This is the house of other people, your one-on-one partnerships, relationships, and how you relate to other people. So it's pretty straightforward, and the changes and shifts and things like this should be quite readily apparent, which is to say changes, shifts, significant culminations, and turning points in relationships and partnerships that you have. Now, this can be super literal in the sense of outgrowing some people or growing in different directions. This could be someone that you're meeting that becomes a significant friend or a partner, a business partner or a romantic partner. This can be a contract coming up to be renewed or coming up to the end of a contract and then needing to decide, do you want to renew a contract? Maybe like it's coming into my mind as like a cell phone service provider where sometimes you can choose then, okay, well, my contract is up, so I'm free to go to another provider if I want. It can even be as dry as that. But what are you expecting out of that relationship is the big question. Is there, in that very dry example, another provider that would be able to provide you with more of what you're wanting? If we look at our personal relationships, it's kind of the same questions of, do you feel satisfied? Do you feel like there's an equal give and take in your partnerships, in your relationships? Do you feel like the expectations that are placed upon you are reasonable and that you want to meet those expectations for people? Do you feel like you are still struggling with some boundary issues? I say still because I feel like a lot of us with Pisces, we're kind of always dealing with that. But maybe there's a need to reinforce that in some way or look over that again. Maybe you even have your walls up pretty high due to some experiences in the past, and maybe you have internalized the lessons there and you're able to bring them down a little bit. This can also be a turning point in a relationship, as in a pivot within a relationship. So this could be a friend that you are going into business with, or a relationship that you're taking to another level as well. There could even be some significant changes that are going on within someone that you feel is quite meaningfully tied to you. So there could be like, oh, my husband is going through a lot, and so I'm needing to step up within this relationship, and it's kind of redefining some of the roles that we play, etc. So it could show up in that way, where a lot of the changes, or at least the origin of the changes, is in the other person, but that it still has that impact, that follow through, basically, that knock-on effect, rather, through the relationship itself. Additionally, with this lunar eclipse in Virgo, for one thing, it's a bit self-referential to you, because the ruler of that eclipse is Mercury, because Mercury rules Virgo. And Mercury is in Pisces during this period of time. So it's pulling that back to you. And so the balance in relationships is going to be something important. So is there a sense of imbalance? Are you projecting your good qualities onto other people? Are you projecting your fears onto other people? Are other people projecting onto you? That's another thing that, as Pisces people can struggle with a bit, is people seeing in us and then evoking in us what they want to see. But how open do we leave ourselves to having that actually evoked in us? Thinking that over may be quite significant. But also, again, coming back to, like, are you projecting your good qualities onto other people? I think that's another thing that we tend to do quite a bit, is trying to see the best in others. And I think that's part of why we wind up struggling with boundaries and so forth. So there may be something along those lines where the volume is turned up a bit on that issue so that you can see it a bit more clearly, maybe see some partners more clearly so that you're able to address that issue and maybe release or let go either of certain connections or, again, how you relate. And so through all of this, really redefining mutual support, trying to bring a sense of greater balance in, trying not to over-prioritize yourself or others, but rather just understand the give and take, understand what you're bringing to the table, what your expectations are, what other people's expectations are, and trying to clear the air. Conversation should help a lot with this. Again, we have Mercury involved. Conversations usually help to clear the air in relationships, so I can only recommend that. But yeah, I think that is pretty much what I have for you, Pisces. So I do hope that this eclipse treats you super well, and thank you so much for spending this time with me.